So you've got a 22 needle circular knitting machine and you'd love to make adult sized beanies? Of course you would. Well, stay tuned because I'm going to show you how to make this one. For this project I've used Signet Aran and it's 100% acrylic yarn and the shade is 275 Blush. I'm not going to bore you guys by showing you how to cast on and knit tubes. You know all that already, okay? And there's hundreds of videos on YouTube showing you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is tell you what I've knitted in advance ready to assemble. I have got one long tube here which is 100 rows with waste yarn at one end and waste yarn at the other. Now you could do it plain, but what I've opted to do is my trailing ivy pattern from needles 1 to needles 10. So if you want to do that, check out my video on trailing ivy and that'll give you an idea how to do that pattern for the long band. Okay, so from needles 1 to needles 10 I did trailing ivy, and we need 5 separate pieces here. Now I've done 50 rows of each. I cast on one end as normal, no waste yarn at all, and I ended with 5 to 6 rows of waste yarn for the 5 separate tubes of 50 rows for each one. So the long one is 100 rows and the little short ones here are 50 rows each. So to start the assembly, we'll take one of our little 50 row tubes and we need to seal the end of this tube. Now you've probably sealed the ends of many a tube, but just a quick recap, and I'm no crocheter, I struggle with a crochet hook, alright? So what I do is I put the tails one end there, and making sure that I've got it over the one side there. Make sure that my line is nice and straight on the one side, so I've got a nice straight tube and not a twisted tube, because when we assemble them we want our lines of our stockinette knit here to look straight and not all wiggly wobbly. So then here we go, I'll lift it up a little bit, hope the camera focuses. So when you do that you end up with one stitch on the end there and a stitch either side, and we take the end stitch there and grab one stitch and pull it through, okay, and then go to that stitch there and we zigzag across and we'll pull that through. Now sometimes because I'm not a crocheter I have to use my other hand, alright, so that's the way I do it. I get the job done, but you professionals out there will just whip across there in seconds. So that's what we do now, is just zigzag across and seal up that tube, and we'll do the same with the others as well. Okay, so I'm going to see, no, for some strange reason I can't do it, so I need tips guys on how to do this in a better way than my ad hoc rubbishy way of doing it with two hands, which looks so unprofessional. And once we've done that and we've got the last stitch on the end of our row there, just grab your matching yarn, not the waste yarn tail, and pull that through like that, little tug, and now we can remove the waste yarn from that, leaving us a nice tidy tube. But we need to do that then with these here, okay? And the good thing about casting on normally and casting off with waste yarn is that you end up with the easy side to pull the waste yarn off. Yay! With the long tube we need to join it together to make a nice band or circle. Okay, so similar here, make sure this is nice and straight and you find your edge, and with the 10 row pattern of trailing ivy it does help a little bit to find that edge. So that's what we do here. And with our tails on the right hand side, so we can pick up that last tail on the end. I'm going to be using the same technique I used for the short tubes. I'm going to take one stitch from one side of the tube, and just loop it through the other one in my ad hoc fashion. So this is the way I'm going to do it. So there we go, and using the corresponding colour waste yarn does help. Making sure that I've grabbed all those stitches, and hopefully I have. I'm going to pull that through there, and I'm also going to pull the other tail through there as well. Close that off, and there we have our band joined together nicely there. So all we need to do now is just remove our waste yarn, and then we'll move on to the next stage of the assembly process. So this is what it looks like with the waste yarn removed, with a nice little zigzaggy plait down the centre, which I kind of like. And next all we need to do is to hide our tails inside as we normally do. So the next stage of the process is to join each of these pieces together, and as you can see I've already joined 3 together, and I'll show you how I'm going to join the 4th one on. So what we do is we get our flat piece, we've got our strings all on the left of each of our pieces, bring the pieces together and making sure that we've got our line of stitches there and our line of stitches there, following all the way up so we keep our piece as straight and neat as possible, making sure that we're all lined up on the bottom here nice and flush. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the inner stitch on each side here, and we're going to do a similar process. So I'll start this side, I think. A similar process to what we did when we sealing up the ends of a tube. So through one and through the other inner stitch and pull through. Okay, so I'm going to miss one and grab one, and excuse my ad hoc crochet skills, as you know I'm not grand at that. Again, there's the stitch, the 2 pairs of stitches that make up there. I'm taking the inner one and I'm pulling it through, and I'm missing one and I'm choosing that one and pulling it through. So I'm going to miss that one, I'm going to pull that one, and I'm missing it because it can get a little bit too tight and distorted if you do every one, but by all means try. But I tried and it maybe it's my crochet technique. So I'm missing one stitch and grabbing the other one, and then missing a stitch and grabbing one. So we're using the inner stitches only of our zigzag. If you can see it there, one goes in and one goes down into a chevron shape. So I'm missing one and grabbing one, missing one and grabbing one, missing one, oops, not grabbing 2, grabbing 1, missing one, grabbing 1. And I'll carry on right up to the top now. Hopefully I'll be able to keep this straight, because it does make your eyes go a bit googly. Miss one, oops, miss one, grab one and pull him through. Miss one, grab one and pull it through. Pull that through there like that to anchor that stitch at the top. like that. There we go. Now it might have been that I didn't line him up quite as well as I could have at the bottom there. So take care on that one. Only when I'm doing a video, I'm trying to concentrate on chatting to you guys, and I don't always pay attention to what I'm doing. So it looks like my tube is the right length, but I haven't actually lined him up perfectly square there on the bottom. Alright, so I'm going to carry on now and attach this rather strange looking tube on the end, because it has got some tension issues, but for demonstration purposes and to show you what to do, it'll be fine. So here's my flat panel of 5 separate pieces of 50 rows each, and to make the tube we just flop it over and we do the same thing again. So making sure that we've got our edges lined up, which I failed to do earlier, so I was slightly out, and we do the same thing again. Grab, there we go, we have our 2 rows of stitches running up there. If you can see, there's 1 row there, 1 zigzag, 1 zigzag, like a little chevron and a little chevron, and we're going to connect the inner every other of that row up there. Okay, so we're going to grab one side and one side and pull it through. Okay, and then I'm going to miss one, grab one, pull it through, miss one, grab one, pull it through, all the way up. Top, grab your tail, pull it through to add that last stitch into the loop along the top, and there you go, we have our tube. Okay, so it's all pretty braided all the way around. There you go. So now all we need to do, and I'm sure you can start to see the shape now of what we're aiming for, stretch it out a little bit, and those seams are quite pretty and they're very secure. So next stage, the next thing we need to do is to attach the band onto the bottom, but first I'm going to hide my tails inside my work to tidy that end up. So as usual, just thread them through and trim them off. So now our bottom end, I've got a little bit of a wiggle there, like I said, because I didn't quite line it up correctly, but we can adjust that now when we attach the band. Alright, now I'm going to choose a side as my back, because as you know, in my project I had some tension issues on one piece, which is that one, so I'm going to put that at the back. So I'm going to choose that as my middle back seam to match my middle seam on my band there. Okay, and like I said, you may, like me, get one part of the band that's flat and one with a slight little indent in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the little piece with the indent and I'm going to turn it inside out like that, and I'm going to right side to right side like that, and match it up with that seam there, so our seams are together. And you can use clips to line this up, or what have I got here? I've got some, oops, I've got some little clips here, so I'm going to put a few of these in. And the same goes, you need to find the edge here and stick to that one as you're going to be sewing it up around so that we have a nice clean edge. So now I've got my band attached to the bottom of my beanie, as you can see there, and I've, as near as possible, followed the line all the way across, all the way around there, if you can see, and I pinned it all in, hopefully so I don't go out of synchronization as I'm sewing around. So I've got my needle threaded ready with matching yarn, and I'm going to start at the seam there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the 2 stitches at the top that form part of the chain, and I'm going to pick up as near as I possibly can similar 2 stitches on the opposite side, and I'm just going to sew across all the way around, joining one part to the other part. I don't usually use stitch markers, I have to be honest, but on this occasion I think they're quite handy. So I'll show you there. You can see the 2 stitches there of that piece there, and the 2 stitches there on the other side of the band where we folded it over. So I'm going to slip my needle between those 2, okay, and between those 2 there, and I'm going to sew along there like that. And that's the only thing with stitch markers, see, they catch the yarn as you go around, so pluses and minuses. So there you go. On the same thing then, I'm going to go and do the same thing again, through those 2 there, and through those 2 there, as near as I possibly can, a little deviation sometimes, and I'm going to carry on around like that, and I'll see you at the end. Take care with your stitches as you're moving around the seam, not to pull them too tightly. You need a little bit of flexibility in this band in order to get the beanie on your head once you've stitched it all together. So just make sure that the stitches are firm but not pulled in overly tight, which will make that seam way too tight for you to get it on your head, okay? So just try a little bit of stretching as you're going along to make sure that the flexibility is still there while your stitches are still anchored firmly. Here we are at the end, looking rather nice. I haven't done too bad a job of keeping it straight. I'm sure you'll do a better job than I will. Next now we need to do is to sort out here to gather this in. In order to gather this in to make more of a beanie shape, you could go around and pick up every stitch along here to put your pull cord through. I find that a little bit laborious, and that's just me. So what I'm going to do is partially tighten each of these up until they're kind of as flat as they'll go along here, and then I'll sew these off, and then I'll do a running stitch around again in order to tighten it all the way up into the beanie shape we all know. So I'm just tightening these up, as you can see here now, just tightening that up, and remember that stitches there is the last one where we braided up the side. So I'm just going to put a little holding stitch in there to hold that off, and I'll do that on all the corners in order to seal that off. go, and then we can hide our tails in there because we'll be threading through a completely new cord. We'll trim that off later, just pop them in. So I'll do that all the way around now, and then we can put our standalone running cord in to finish off the beanie. This is the last one. It's cinched the beanie to a certain extent, but obviously not all the way. So this is where our manual draw cord will come into play. Actually, thinking about it now, at this stage, you've actually got like a messy bun, haven't you, really, with the hole at the top? So if you hand crochet, you could crochet around there to finish that off, and you've got a messy bun version. There you go, that's just popped into my head now. So, there you go. If you're doing a messy bun one, stop now and crochet a decorative edge or something to make it more finished. So yeah, feed our excess yarn through there, tails. Tuck that inside for now, and we'll snip them off later. So there you go. As you can see, the beanie's partially bunched in. So now I'm going to take my other piece of yarn, and I'm going to basically just do a running stitch all the way along the top, as close to the top as I can, leaving a tail, and then we'll manually pull that in. But by all means, if you would rather pick up every stitch and do it that way, do it that way. But I'm kind of an impatient kind of gal, and I would find that quite daunting, but that's just me. So just a plain old running stitch, about 1 centimetre between each one, or thereabouts. This yarn is clagging a bit. Take a little bit of that out, and then that'll cinch all the top in. There we go, and give us our proper beanie shape at the top. Plus it'll hide any little anomalies we've got in our joins, which is always a good thing, especially when I'm doing it. And here we are back at the beginning, so another little one there at the front, and then we've got our drawstring. So fingers crossed the yarn doesn't break now. Maybe I should have used a double strand, so think about maybe doing a double strand. And here we go, we'll pull our nice beanie shape in. There we go, it's coming in rather nicely. See? There you go. So we've got a bit of a hole, but we do get a hole when we're doing it with the Addis and the Centros as well. So we just need to arrange and tug and arrange and a tug, and cinch and sew and cinch and sew, as they say. So there we go, we got a little bit of a hole, as is normal, and I'll sew that up now and hide my tail inside, and then I'll show you the finished thing. So I finished stitching up my beanie, and as you can see there, I've sealed the hole at the top with just a few stitches. Pull the yarn through the other side and hide it in the layers as we normally do. And now I'm going to do the nice part, which is to add a pretty pom-pom. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to push my crochet hook through there. I'm going to grab that piece of elastic on there, and I'm going to drag it through. To the back side. Excellent. And I've got one of my little pom-pom buttons. Now I picked these up locally, and a few people have asked me where I got them from. And it was a lady locally that was selling some bits and bobs. She called them ribbon buttons, but I haven't got a clue. I have seen them on Etsy though, in various forms. So have a look on there, and all I do then is just, oops, squidge that around there like that, which means that the pom-pom can be removed for washing. There she is, the finished product, the finished beanie. I like it, it's kind of cute. Remember when you're sewing up around here now, okay? Don't do it too tightly, otherwise you're going to lose the stretch there of the beanie, alright? So make sure that you keep it loose, or even stretch the fabric a little bit as you're sewing it together, alright? So you keep that stretch and you don't get that tight band there. Alright, so just a little reminder for that. Totally customizable. If you had an order for somebody who had a lot of hair and needed a bigger hat, add another panel, okay? Because these panels are about 3 inches. So if you added another panel, you'd have a lovely big hat, roomy hat then for somebody who needed that extra size. And if you wanted to make even a small hat, take a panel out. Make a 4-panel beanie. You could do these multiple colours.
This is one I made for my husband out of the ugliest yarn I had in my stash. The uprights for this one are 40 rows, making it a more fitted beanie, and he has a large head, and as you can see, it fits him nicely.
Thanks for tuning in, absolutely great to have you here again. I'll see you next time, and like I said, subscribe, like, comment and share, and if any of my patterns are of use to you in a monetary form especially, if you could give a small donation to a local animal charity, animal rescue centre, that would be absolutely amazing, in lieu of a pattern price or a coffee if you saw me in a coffee shop. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. If you make it, tag me mind, okay? Tag me, Crafty Caz33 on Instagram, Caz Harris on Facebook and other social media. See you next time. Happy crafting. I hope you like it. I think it's kind of cute. Okay, I'm off now. All right, see you next time. Ta-ra. Bye.